happy and optimistic as always. So it's Wilfred Owen today again. So I don't know why. I look for like a autumn poem, and there would be Wilfred Owen. You look for November poems, there would be like Wilfred Owen. Look for winter poems, there would be like Wilfred Owen. I don't know why, but he's like everywhere this season. So the Gnomiki seem to really like him. So let's have a look at the Unreturning. Suddenly, night crushed out the day and hurled her remnants over cloud peaks, thunder-walled. Then fell a stillness, such as harks appalled when far-gone dead return upon the world. There watched I for the dead, but no ghost woke. Each one whom life exiled they named and called, but they were all too far, or damned, or thralled, and never one fared back to me or spoke. Then peered the indefinite, unshapen dawn with vacant gloaming, sad as half-lit mines, the weak-limbed hour when sick men's sighs are drained. And while I wondered on they being withdrawn, gagged by the smothering wing which none unbinds, I dreaded even a heaven with doors so chained. So what have you to say about this happy poem? Have you to say about this happy poem?
Well, if I would to just say under which circumstances this poem is to be read and appreciated, I would probably imagine somewhere in the middle of the night with lots of, I don't know, not many stars, maybe some glittering stars, maybe some snow or something. But the most important thing is that it's dark and cold and maybe a bit like sort of there's a bit of rain, a bit of snow. So that is of course not an impression. It's rather the circumstances that appear in my brain, in my diluted brain as I read and think, as I read the poem and think of it. So this is of course only contradicts the point someone made about it being a very optimistic and a poem that inspires enthusiasm for life, but I wouldn't say that it does not do these things. It's like everything that is being read throughout the night, it looks like something full of mysteries to be explored. And of course ghosts are supposed to appear sometime during the night. So if we're waiting for ghosts to appear, it's no use waiting now. We should wait till it gets really, really, really dark.
Mm-hmm. So we have a little bit of a context. We know what kind of poetry it is. We know it's war poetry. We're aware of it.
Yeah. Yes.
So can we say that this is war poetry? Or is it an exception from Wilfred Owen's poetry? Does it look like it's a war poem?
Well, yes and no, because war such, it is not mentioned. So if you're looking for signs of the war in the poem, then you might be looking in vain, because there is no direct mention of the war in the poem, but the implications might be drawn. If you speak of the war, you speak of people who get killed, and Wilfred Owen addresses the dead. And of course the heading of the poem, which is the Unreturning, also means something about the war, because we often speak of all those soldiers who never came back, who never returned from the war. On the other hand, if you decide to read it with other dead people in mind, whom you either want to return or whom you want to converse with, this might also work. So it works both ways.
Yeah. So the Unreturning, like you say, that's a title, that's important. Now, why Unreturning? Because we have different meanings of unreturning in this poem. What are they?
Well, the meaning that emerges when we read the heading and the poet's name, Wilfred Owen, knowing that he is a war poet, immediately means these are people who never returned from the war. As we read the poem, though, we also encounter contexts which are a bit different. He's waiting for ghosts of the dead to appear, and yet they do not appear. He names the names, he calls the ghosts, but they never really go to the poet. And because there is always our way of sort of coming to grips with death. One of these is just to call the names, to try to remember these people. The other way, which is a very maybe mystical, maybe stupid way, is to wait till the souls of the dead appear. And it seems that the doors of heaven, he says, are so chained that even though he might be calling on the dead, they never really appear. I don't know whether it's. I think I've read some war poetry, but I don't know whether it is only typical for a typical war poem to appeal to the dead, because usually what they want to have in war poems, as far as I understand, is to appeal to the living ones, so that they, the living ones, remember the dead, that the dead are not forgotten. And here, is there an appeal in the poem to the living ones? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I see it here.
Well, you talk to the living ones by talking to the dead ones, because it's the living ones who read it, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I looked a little bit. It's convenient because on the website you just click on the poet's name and you get his short live description. And I remembered the fact we mentioned earlier. He died in 1918, just as the war was drawing to a close. And again, it's like sort of he addresses the dead in the poem, and yet by the time the poem was published, he was dead himself.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's sort of a paradox that appears here. He talks to the dead, and by talking to the dead, he talks to us who are alive, and he is dead. While in the poem, the situation is vice versa. he's alive, and he's talking to the dead. So it's like this interconnection is quite interesting and full of sort of this paradox, full of these interesting things he does with his poem.
Yeah, agreed. Right. So does it sound like an like you say, optimistic, patriotic poem which you may read to make your soldiers happy?
No, it probably doesn't. It calls for some sort of reflection, and probably what you want from your soldiers as they are in action is not to be very much reflective, but to just to go on and do what their duty is.
Mm-hmm.
And again, one of the lines of a famous Russian war poet, which was also transformed into a song, is "Let everyone act and perform what they have to do, what they have to perform." So it's not call for action here in this poem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have different kinds of war poetry. Some are meant to inspire people or to bring them some hope that maybe you will die, but you will defend your country, you're doing the right thing. If not for you, then everyone else dies, so let's go and do it. And some of them could be more lyrical, like describing the life on front there somewhere in the battle, and how the soldiers are not a mass of people, but each soldier is a person. Or sometimes we have poems like that where we look at, let's say, the ugly side of war, where he doesn't try to make it pretty. He shows it as it is. So what do we have here? Well, we have a sonnet, really. Another sonnet. Interesting. Just keep running into sonnets. And do you immediately connect the idea of a sonnet with war poetry?
No, it's usually connected to love poetry.
Mm-hmm. Or at least something, again, lyrical.
Something lyrical.
Yeah, but here we have a war poem in the shape of a sonnet. It's really, really interesting because whatever you say about form, to some extent, defines the meaning, to some extent. So the form has effect. It affects how we perceive it. So if you talk about all the dead, all the horror, and you put it into a form of a sonnet, then how does it affect you as a reader, as you read it?
You are probably, at least the easiest effect that it has on the reader is that the reader probably supposes there's much more about this poem than just patriotic calls for action, or there's much more about it than just describing life on the front, life on the front line. Or there might be something about describing love, soldiers are real people. They might fall in love, they might leave the loved ones behind as they go to war. So you might expect that to be in the poem if you remark that it is so. And yet, I think you only recognize it as I might be that wrong, but you only recognize it as a sonnet as you have read the entire poem through. And when you have read it, you immediately recognize if it is something about love.
A sonnet doesn't have to be about love.
Yeah.
Okay? It doesn't have to be about love.
Yeah. So if it is really lyrical, then the lyre works in the direction of describing some people who are dead. So it produces this unexpected connection. On the one hand, you probably expect something lyrical, something alive, if not lively, and on the other hand, you get something that is full of the word death, the dead, ghosts, unreturning, and so on.
So maybe it's his relation to the dead, that he doesn't see them as as a mindless slaughter or as something just abstract, like, oh well, it's war, you have lots of people dying, but he takes it personally. They're his friends, he knows their names. And the whole thing is, rather than being again moralistic and didactic, like, oh look, war is so horrible, all these good people dying, how they but he looks at it from a more lyrical perspective. Okay, let's have a look. Suddenly, and we start with the word suddenly, and again, we keep in mind that it's about war, then starting with a suddenly is quite in the context, because whatever happens at war, it's sudden. Suddenly night crushed out the day and hurled her remnants over cloud peaks. Thunderwald. So we start reading it, and how do we feel? What's the image?
The first word is sudden, as you said, and this immediately sort of takes the reader by surprise. There's something sudden that is going to happen, so you expect something, and your expectations are sort of crushed out exactly the way the first line talks about night. And then it's war, as you say, has lots of unexpected things happening, and the war, although it might be expected, comes often as something unexpected, because till the very last moment people hope that war never comes unless they have a personal stake in enjoying the war. And death is also something that might be expected, and yet we often, if not always, hope that those whom we treasure will stay alive, and so on and so on. And then suddenly this happens, and there's night. There's no more day because it's crushed out. And because we are also looking at part of the second line, you might try to find peace and light somewhere up in the sky, but as far as I understand, it's not going to happen, because both these surfaces where war is happening and the skies are dark, and there's no way we can make them full of light again.
And don't forget that we're talking not about old-fashioned war. We talk about modern war, when we have the aviation, right?
Yeah.
So the first line, the first stanza, the first stanza, it could be describing a bomb falling on you. A knight crashed out the dead, hurled her remains over cloud peaks, thunder walled. Woo! Yeah?
Yeah. And again, you might be wondering, well, why is it you? Why is it you who has to experience this? And of course, there's a bomb, and if it falls directly on you, there's a high chance that you are dead by the time you comprehend what was happening. If there's just this shelling and there are bombs falling, but none of them hit you directly, then it's just as sudden again, and each and every bomb is not something that you probably can grow accustomed to, because you know that bombing is going on, and yet each and every explosion of the bomb comes as something sudden.
Yeah, and also, of course, we look up, we look into the sky, and then we talk about the dead returning or not returning. So, like you say, you may look up at the sky in hope, but here we only have more chaos, more destruction, thunder, cloud peaks, again something sharp, cloud peak, thunder walled. We have a wall of thunder, which is interesting. How can you have a wall of thunder? But anyway, it's again, it's a barrier. It's a wall between the dead and the living, and you will not see them, and they will not see you. It's a total disconnection here. What is thunder? How can it be a wall?
If we go to this bomb thing, then if bombing is happening in a way that never really stops, it sort of creates a wall that sounds like thunder, that sounds even more horrible than thunder is, because again, thunder, when we are grown up people, we are not usually afraid of thunder. We know that it sometimes sounds unexpected or terrible, but most of the time there's nothing to fear. But here, thunder, threatening, is something original and threatening, and it creates a wall between you who are being bombed, who might lose your lives each and every moment, and the rest of the world, which might be happy, very happy, but at least which is not risking being killed each and every moment.
Yeah, and thunder is sound. So sound becomes a wall, or you may think of thunder as God's wrath, maybe. So it's something you can't see, but which is very present and strong, the thunder. And of course we have the word remnants, another really happy word in this context. Shreds, remnants. Then fell a stillness, such as harks appalled, when far gone dead return upon the world. So, if we look at the rhymes, then herald, walled, appalled, world, that more or less one rhyme. You can say it's two rhymes, but you can say it's one rhyme, or at least these are very close rhymes. So we have tension building. When we have more than two rhymes, it's tension building. And the first stanza is building the tension. First we have something sudden, and then absolute stillness, something opposite. And what is more horrible, the deafening thunder or the deafening silence, which is more horrible. So the first part is really impressive. It's really big. It's deafening and deathening with TH. Yeah. And then fell stillness. So the night falls like a bomb, and then stillness falls and spreads. And again, you may imagine that after a bomb's fallen, then you have some sort of stillness and silence as everyone's dead there. Hearts appalled. So another happy word, appalled. When far gone dead return upon the world.
Yeah. Well, isn't it true that the word hark hunting? And if that's true, then harks here sort of represent manhunt.
Hark is listen.
Yes. But I understand that you also use this word to how do you say that? To attract the attention of your dogs when you are hunting,
well, usually it's a command, like hark.
A hunter's shout to hounds. It's like a command. As to encourage the dogs in following the scent. That's what my dictionary says here.
Yeah, could be. Well, hark is like halt, hark, listen, pay attention. When you order someone to listen to you. But really, it's not, as you say, dogs and things. It's not its main meaning. It's only in the context. The main meaning is that it's old-fashioned, it's poetic. It's a poetic word, first of all. If you say hark, then you are taken to the old times. Yeah, as harks appalled. Not listens, but harks. And then again, it has that harsher sound to it, hark, rather than listen, which is softer. So the night.
Again, because.
Yeah.
No, it was.
You're disappearing.
Remembering. I'm disappearing.
Yeah, for half a second or so.
Okay.
So the connection isn't very stable. Oh dear. Okay. Far gone dead return upon the world. Not just the dead, but far gone dead. They return upon the world. And do we have a zombie apocalypse? Is it time to call the Hollywood filmmakers?
Well, we might think of the world here as the world of the living. And we might even think that we are sort of in the control of this world, that as something sudden and terrible happens, such as the first 3 lines of stanza 1, we are no longer in control. This world is no longer the world of the living, and the dead return to this world. They might be just someone who died as a result of a bombing, as a result of this battle or something. They might be, and again, one thing about the battle, as I mentioned it, is that when you are in battle, you're sort of pushed forward. You might kill someone, you might get killed or wounded, but there's an action on your part. As you're sitting there waiting for the bomb to fall upon your head, it's a sort of a battle, but it's a very different kind of a battle. That I mentioned in passing, and then the dead, people who just died in this battle, in this bombing, or people who died long time ago are back, and they are now the ones who take over the control of this world, of the.
Yeah, and we notice it didn't happen. It's only he compares it, yeah, such as harks appalled when far gone dead return upon the world. So when do the far gone dead return upon the world? That's a very specific event in the, again, Christian tradition, when the far gone dead return upon the world, which is
Is it well, I don't know whether it's Christian tradition. It seems to be like a pagan tradition, but don't you tell stories of the dead returning just before Christmas?
Well, not really, but in a bigger way, yes, maybe, or Easter. The thing is, the dead return when it's doomsday, the end of the world. Yeah? The end of the world, then.
So you mean something, yes, something that is going to happen one day.
Yeah, because he mentions heavens here, so we speak within that paradigm. And within the paradigm we have heaven, we have Christianity. The only time when the dead return is the doomsday. Yeah. Which is, on one hand, the most horrible day, at the same time the happiest day. As all the old world is destroyed, but the new world appears. Well, generally, I guess people don't like the idea of participating in the event of the end of the world. But still, he says, I thought it was the end of the world. I guess that's what he says. He says, I felt like it was the end of times, the doomsday. I was expecting the dead to appear. It was so horrible. It could only be the last days of humanity. They watched I for the dead, but no ghost walk. And so we have I now. We have the narrator, we have personal presence. They watched I for the dead. And again, it's not any lyrical poem when, oh, my love is dead, but maybe I'll see her ghost. Their dead is collective. It's not one person, not two people. It's everyone. And the watched I for the dead. We have the opposition, I and the dead. I here, the dead there, and I'm watching, I'm waiting for them. I'm welcoming them, but they're not coming, no ghost walk.
How would you account for the fact that the poet spells dead with small d in the last line of stanza 1, and the very next line uses the word dead with capital D, exactly as the word I is spelled with a capital I.
Yeah, because it's more important and more personal and bigger. I guess the first time he says, when far gone dead return upon the world, it's in general. The second time they watched Eye for the dead. The dead are the collective consciousness of the dead. More like people, race, what do you call it? The dead, not just a state of being dead, but the dead, like entities, ghosts, spirits, I guess. Or maybe, like you say, because I is capital and so the dead is capital too. Because we have the connection and the position. On one hand, he belongs to the dead. Because he's at war, he's as good as dead. But at the same time, at this moment of the poem, he's alive. And he can oppose himself to them. I'm here, you are there. I'm waiting for you, I'm watching for you. But no ghost walk. And maybe that's the horror of it. Because it's so dreadful, so horrible. You think it's the end of the world, it's the final doomsday, and it isn't. How can it...
Or it is, and the unexpected happens. On doomsday, the dead are expected to rise from their graves, but no ghosts wait here.
Mm-hmm. So it's not the end of the world. And then
it's
that's...
not the end of the world, or the end of the world is even worse than what you supposed it to be.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the horror, because you find yourself in such a deep, deep darkness of that night which crashed out the day, that you don't think it can get any worse. And then you realize it's just nothing. No ghost walk. Each one whom life exiled, I named and called. But they were all too far, or damned, or thralled. So again we have life with a capital L. Each one whom life exiled. So exiled is another happy word. So they are not dead, as such they're exiled from life. Because the word exile, has its meanings, has its implications. If you say that someone is exiled, then we have like a motherland or native land, which is life, and then you do something wrong or whatever, and you're sent away, but still you have the connection. You have your dreams, you hope to return, because still you belong to the original place, you belong to life. And you feel the sadness. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so sorry. Yet it seems that it's not my idea, my desire to go to war and to defend my homeland or to defend, I don't know, somebody's interests or something. It doesn't happen because I went to the war and got killed. It happens because life has decided I do no longer belong and exiled me, threw me away.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something that was done at my own will, or at least as a result of something I wanted to do. It's something that somebody else has decided to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in somebody else's power.
Yeah. And then we have each one whom life exiled, I named and called. So I is somewhere between life and death. If you look at these two lines, then first line, I and the dead are opposed and connected. The second line, life and I are opposed and connected, because life does something, but I don't agree with it. I try to change it. Yeah. Each one whom life exiled, I named and called, and if he had enough power, they would be back. Then again, now we see really, really deep personal connection, not just the dead, which is abstract. Oh, well, somebody died 10,000 years ago. Why would I care? I never knew them. Lots of people die every second. I don't care because I don't know anything about them. But here, it's his friends. It's someone he can name. He knows their names, he knows their faces, he calls them. You don't call someone you don't care about. If he can, and he says each one. So each one is a person, he knows everyone. And he cares, he knows them, he names and he calls. Calling the name is really powerful, as we know from other poems. But that is not enough here, because war is bigger, or death and life, they're still bigger than what he's trying to do, but he's still trying, that's the point. He still hopes they can hear him, they can come back. So here, in those lines, you see the picture of a lonely soldier who's left alone, alive, when all his friends are gone. Everyone he knew are dead. They're all dead. How does he feel? So he hears a dreadful thunder, maybe a bomb falling, then a horrible stillness and silence. And what is he doing? Does he run away in horror?
No, he doesn't.
He goes right into the middle of it, and he tries to use that wave to connect to his friends. And again, the same as in the previous poem, they're completely different, but at the same time you see the same image, a lonely figure in the middle of a storm, alone, bearing the storm in the name of someone who's crossed the line. So different and yet so similar. Longer Shadows we discussed last time, and the Unreturning today. The image is very much alike. Each one whom life exiled, I named and called. So he's so desperate, he goes right into the middle of the horror in hope to find them there, but to no avail. They were all too far or damned or thralled. How can the dead be too far or damned or thralled?
You call London, you expect them to respond, you want them to reappear. And what happens is they do not respond. Why don't they? Maybe because they are too far. They are dead and they are too far from this part of the reality to be able to hear you. Or maybe it's because they are dumb. They can't hear you because someone else did this thing to them. They can't hear you. Or maybe they have fallen slaves to the death power. They are thralled and you can't really fetch them back. You can't really pull them away from death's grips.
So he doesn't for a second suppose that they just ignore him or something like that. If they can't answer, that's not his fault, not their fault. It's because they're too far, or they're dumped or thrown. Maybe they're just too far for him to reach them. Or maybe they can hear him, but they're dumped, they can't answer. Maybe it's just one-way communication. Or maybe, like you say, they're thralled, they're enslaved by death, say. And it's not, again, not their choice, not their decision not to answer.
It's not their decision to die. It's not their decision to answer now when they are being called back by someone who's on this part of the world, on this part of the reality. Yeah, so it seems, and again, it's probably what happens during all wars, but it was probably a very difficult thing for the First World War, because not everyone understood why the war was being fought, and not everyone understood the impact of this new warfare you mentioned, the aviation, the bombs, all those things, which often meant that you were sitting there in the trenches waiting to be called by the death, waiting to be killed. And it's all just didn't make any sense. Maybe that's again something that we can also feel here.
Yeah, or also you can say it may relate to people who are not dead as in dead, but dead as being soldiers. If you're a soldier, you're already dead, and he may be calling to people he knows who are not really dead, but who are still too far away, or dumped, or thralled. Because these things could literally happen to a person at war. Yeah. So it might be. So here we erase the difference between the living and the dead. At war, everyone is half dead and half alive, like in the other poem. Yeah. Never one fed back to me or spoke. So we have these interesting cross connections between lines. We have I for the dead and live, exiled I, named. And then we have one, never one, and each one and never one, no one. We have they're too far, and never one fed back. So still we have far, the distance. Not just spoke back, but fed back to me or spoke. So he names, he calls, but they don't speak.
No, they don't.
And they're asleep. No ghost woke means the ghosts are asleep. But at the same time, they're not peacefully asleep, because they might be, for instance, thralled, which is not peaceful. Interesting. Right, let's have a little break, maybe 5 minutes. And then we'll go to the bed. Oh yeah, looks like it.
We are not unreturning.
Oh. Right, now we have the last bit. And we change form. In here. So the first stanza was more or less one rhyme. The second stanza is circular, like there is no way out. Woke, cold throat, spoke. Yeah, you're running in circles, but the end brings you back to the beginning, and there's no way out. And then we have the last bit, which even if you don't know anything about sonnets and things, you can see that the last part is different. Yeah, there are 6 lines and not 4, and the rhyming is more open. ABC, ABC. It's not that rigid, let's say. Okay. So it's because it's all indefinite, unshapen. Yeah, it's more flowing, let's say. Then Pete, the indefinite, unshapen dawn, with vacant gloaming, sad as half-lit minds. So we had the night, which crushed out the day. He with the thunder and with the silence, and through that thundering silence, he's calling and no one's answering, and he is a bit confused, because how can this not be the doomsday? And then Pete, the indefinite, unshapen dawn. So we've been through the night, and now we see the dawn. So why?
Well, if we want to, the doomsday means there's the end of the world and nothing is going to be as it used to be. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be no dawn, no night, nothing. But here it seems that it is not doomsday, at least not a doomsday as we usually picture it. And the night is followed by dawn, as we might expect it. The problem with the dawn is that
it's withdrawn.
It's withdrawn, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And there's nothing, again, because it's so, as far as I'm concerned, shapeless, because you can't really say anything definite about it. You are not really sure if it is dawn or something. There are bits when there is dark, again, this glowing thing, and you have experienced the hell of the bombing, the night that has fallen sharply. You experienced silence, which wasn't followed by the return of the dead. And now it's dawn. The dead should stay in their graves now, because it's not their time. And yet you are not really sure whether that is the case. And your mind, as the last few words in line 2 say, are not quite clear about it. They are half lit.
Mm-hmm.
There's light, there's glow, there's dawn, but the dawn is indefinite. It has no shape. So again, the dawn is usually something optimistic, because it predicts a nice day, or it predicts, you might look at it, okay, appearing, and it looks like a bright day ahead, or there's not much sunshine, it looks like a very dull day. But
well, anyway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, anyway, if you have a horrible night and then there's a dawn, then normally, traditionally, expectedly, that means, is it good or bad to see the dawn?
Sorry, what did you say?
Yeah, I said,
Is it?
anyway, no matter a good day or bad day, it doesn't matter. If you have a horrible night and then you see the dawn, then normally, expectedly, traditionally, is it good or bad to see the dawn?
It's good. It's good.
Is it good here? Is it a happy dawn?
Absolutely not.
Mhm. So even the dawn here is vacant, it's gloaming. Gloaming means it's not bright. Gloaming is gloaming is what you see in the evening. Gloaming is the time before sunset, not sunrise. So again, everything's mixed up. The dead, the living, sunrise, sunset. You don't know where you are, why you are, who you are, what you are. It's all indefinite, unshapen, vacant, gloaming, sad as half-lit minds. Again, is it a very happy dawn?
No.
Why would we compare dawn with half-lit minds with vacant gloaming? Is it a happy mind? Is it a healthy mind? Or is it the mind of a smoker?
It's mind that is more or less unsure about what has happened, what is going to happen, and it just can't make any sense of it.
Okay, so what we have here, we had the dead and the living, and that was a very clear position. Okay, they're dead, they're somewhere out there, these are alive, or these are trying to call them because they care. Okay, the dead are the dead, the alive are alive. And now we come to the place in between, which again is horrible. Because if they're dead, then they're not suffering anymore. If you're alive, then at least you're alive, and that is very good. To be alive, it's great. But now we come to a place in between. We come to... Where do we come?
We come to something which is half-lit, which is dawn, which is light and not quite light.
Yeah, we come to infirmary. We come to infirmary.
Okay.
A half-lit minds and a weak-limbed hour when sick men's sighs are drained. We come to infirmary, we see a hospital where the people are in between life and death. And the morning, instead of bringing life and hope, it's the time when people die in the morning. Somehow, I think I read about it somewhere. I'm not sure, I might be mistaken, but they say it is true that many people in hospitals die very early in the morning rather than at night or in the day. I might be wrong, but I think I heard something like that. So instead of, well, maybe in a way he may say, well, that's bringing them new life in death. Maybe it's a kind of a relief to be exiled from war, but still, it's not a happy picture, and he'd rather it didn't happen. It was something different, but the minds of the people in the infirmary, they're half-lit, they're sad. The gloaming of consciousness is vacant. Yeah, they're about to disappear. They can't hold their thoughts together. Are they dead or are they alive at this point? It's unshapen, it's indefinite. Their state is unshapen and indefinite. reclaimed hour when sick men's sighs are drained. Again, that interesting word, limbed. What does that mean?
I did a quick research into the words. It originally, it means lit, like the word light. Unlike the word light, comes from another stem, the stem that brings us back to the word lumen in Latin, which means light. Yes.
Yeah, so limbed is light, lit, but really weakly. Or like the moon can lime something.
Yeah, and of course, another word that it is connected with is a French word. It seems that in English it appears via French, and it's the word illuminer, which means to illumine a manuscript, to make it, to brighten it up, to make it clear. And here you can't really make sense of it. You can't really make clear of what's, as you say, whether you are dead or alive, whether you are going to die or whether you're going to stay in this world.
Yeah, so what I gather, what happens in the poem, if you put it into like plain English, a bomb falls, there's that hurling, thunder, and then the stillness and silence, but he is there. He's not killed on the spot. Maybe he's still affected. Maybe he's lost his hearing, something, and he lies there waiting to die. He lies there after the attack, and he expects to see the dead who would be the other dead. Him being dead and them coming to take him with them. They don't answer. So he's still alive. And then he is found and he's brought to a hospital. And that's at the dawn where he finds himself. Because now we have a very different location. First we had it outside with the night, hurling, thunder, things. And now we are indoors, now we are in infirmary. And we see the sick people dying around him from early wounds. So I guess that is what happened here. He was caught in an attack, but not really killed, and now he's in a hospital. And that's what he can see around, and indefinite, unshaping, vacant, gloaming, half-lit minds, weak-limbed hour. That's all the same image, really. Hazy, it's all hazy. His perception is hazy. He's neither here nor there. It's not like the dawn is unshapen and indefinite, it's his state. And it's not like people around him have half-lit minds. He is in the same position. The narrator here is not separate, apparently. The weakling hour when sick men's sighs are drained, and he can still hear around him, feel it, how people around him keep dying. First they died on spot in the bomb attack. Now they are dying one by one from the side effects, let's say, from their injuries. And again, he can watch it. It doesn't go out suddenly, like the night crashing out the day. It goes gradually, like the dawn appearing. And so as the dawn is breaking, Oh, they're dying. Their size are drained. Interesting. And while I wondered on their being drawn, gagged by the smothering wing which none unbinds, I dreaded even a heaven with doors so chained. So again, in 2 words, the picture I see, again, I might be wrong, it's just the way I see it, is everyone around him dies, and he feels like he'll be there soon as well. He's watching them, he's wondering, but at the same time he knows he's not different, and he fears, he dreads dying, because he doesn't see any hope there. So while I wondered on their being withdrawn, so dawn rhymes with withdrawn, which again is very interesting, because like we say, dawn is something that breaks out rather than being withdrawing, and here it's the opposite. It's a really unusual use of dawn in poetry. Really strange, really powerful. So your comments on this unusual dawn?
Yeah, as you said, you break something, but we'll begin by when it's dawn, daybreak, as we usually call it. But the problem here is, of course, that it's not daybreak as such, as something which is a continuation of a crushed that happens in the very first line. And I'm not sure, well, we are not yet in line, in the line beginning with the word gagged yet, or probably.
Yeah, you can look at it too, because we look at this last bit, how dawn rhymes with withdrawn, and minds with none unbinds, and drained and chained.
Yeah. So again, the absolute tragedy of it is that you don't understand why you're there, you don't understand why someone dies and why you're still alive, and yet while you might still be alive, you don't really know whether it's going to be for long, whether you're going to die anytime soon. And your mind is very unclear. It's not something that's, again, something that we usually say, it's dawned on me, that's something else. So there's no dawn of such stuff here. Instead, you feel that you are shapeless. You can't say, you might say this is terrible, but again, you can't really define it in words. It's, as he says, indefinable. And because you can't really define it, you feel like you are gagged. There's something in your mouth, something that is very much suffocating.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So, gagged by the smothering wing which none unbinds, is it about a sick man whose sighs are drained, or is it about the narrator, or is it about both?
It might be about both. The narrator might be, as you say, he might be wounded, and of course you are not only wounded physically, but there's also wound trauma, as we call it today, that affects your mind as well. And this trauma does not allow you to articulate something. while the rest of them who are probably dying are also there without even contemplating that they are still alive, and they might survive or they might die. They are probably under some sort of drug that something like painkiller drug that makes them a bit unconscious. So they are somewhere in between. They hang somewhere in between. And smother, as I understand, can also mean killing someone by making them suffocate. So that they can't so that they can't breathe. And this is what's happening here. So you are absolutely unable to understand what's happening, and you are suffocating, both you, the narrator, and you, the other people around the narrator who are even he has a chance to talk to us some 100 years later. The people around him didn't even have the chance to talk to him while he was still there.
Yeah, so we have this idea of listening and hearing nothing. We have the first stanza, harks appalled, harks listens, but there's nothing coming. Then I called, but no one spoke back to me. Again, I'm calling, I'm listening, I'm watching, but nothing comes back. It's a communication breakdown. And now again, I wondered, I dreaded, and we have gagged by this smothering wing which none unbinds, really meaning death again. They are being withdrawn. How? By being gagged by the suffocating wing. And the wing is interesting because it's like the angel of death, and using his wing to take people, which none unbinds. How can you unbind the wing? Oh, interesting. And but at the same time, grammatically, it can be about the narrator. I wondered how gagged by the, or they're being withdrawn, how gagged by. So again, we have no difference. We eliminate the border. It's all unshaped and indefinite. Are you alive? Are you dead? Who is alive? Who is dead? Where is the border? We can't see it. And we feel his hazy mind again. We feel the confusion. We follow him. He doesn't observe it as many narrators do. He doesn't tell us some abstract story about someone else. He is present in every line. And it's not just in the picture he depicts, he describes, but also in his mind. Because you can tell a story, but it can be impersonal. Or you can tell a story which would be very personal, because then you can feel the person's mind in it. Like here, we can feel him being cold and lonely, and somewhere on the very edge of reality in the first two stanzas. Again, it's the edge of reality where he expects, he doesn't know, is he going to be alive or dead, and he's very close to the world of the dead, so close that he can call them, and if they don't answer, that's only because they don't have such ability or possibility to do it. But they're really, really close, so they might hear him. We feel it. and his state, we can feel it. And that stanza where he's in a hospital, we can feel it too, and his confusion, and how the light, as in the sky, the light is kind of growing weakly, but in the minds, the same light is extinguished. And we can feel it. We can feel this contradiction, you may say, if there's a contradiction. I dreaded even a heaven with doors so chained. So it's like he feels like he's about to die. And if you die, and you're a Christian person, if you die, then what do you expect? Either to go to hell or to heaven. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you are sort of maybe it's because you sort of knock at the door, heaven, and it's chained and locked, and no one responds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, it's just, it makes you wonder why. You can't really decide whether you are ready to die or not, whether you are dead or not, because all the reality is, as you say, hazy, dizzy, something. There's no shape to your reality, and then you knock at the door, and there's no response, and again you don't understand why. And again, if we imagine that this is a very particular situation that happened to our poet, he was wounded, he spent some time in hospital, he was about to die, or he thought he was about to die, but he didn't, and then he was shot and killed some months later in France, as we know from his bio. Yes, that was some date. Again, what sense does it make? Why wasn't it? Why was the door to heaven chained at that moment? Why did it open to me a few days or a few months later?
So chained in here, chained. When you lock something, when you chain something, then you don't do it one way. You do it two ways. You lock something in, you lock something out for someone. And here he says, I dreaded even a heaven with doors so chained. So he says, I'm not talking about going to hell, because obviously going to the hell is not a pleasant journey. I've seen hell here on this planet. I know, I can imagine what it's like, so I'm not talking about it. But even the heaven, because do you normally dread going to heaven? Is it a normal reaction?
Well, if you have a choice, if you can't stay here and you have a choice of either going to heaven or go to hell, you would certainly prefer heaven.
Yeah. So normally the idea of heaven is not related to fear. It's related to hope, to happiness, a happy ending. But I dreaded even a heaven, again, shows how deep his state is, how deep this fear, this disconnectedness, and why a heaven with doors so chained. So you may say, it's chained means it's hard to get in. But I believe he says it's chained so it's hard to get out. Because all through the poem he's calling to the dead and they can't get back to him. The doors are chained. So again, I'm damned if I'll go to hell. I'm damned if I'm damned to hell, because I've seen hell here. So we suppose that all soldiers go to heaven because they have suffered enough in this world. So they're in heaven, but they can't get back to him. So the doors are chained in heaven, and that is his dread. That heaven is good, but the way he sees it here, it will be again a total, final disconnection. He won't be able to communicate as the dead are not able to communicate with him, apparently. And we have, of course, words unbinds and then chained in the end of the lines, interestingly. Because first you unbind something, even if it's in a negative sense, none unbind, still you have the idea of unbinding. But in unbinding you have binding again. So you have both ideas of tying, chaining, and untying, unchaining, and then you make it more clear, more final by having the last word chained. Yeah, what else is here?
So what's your response to that? Why was it all happening to them?
You're asking me?
Yes. Whom else can I ask?
Yourself. Because whatever happens or happened or will happen is also your responsibility. It's my responsibility, but it's your responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility in the genomical sense. In the sense, if something unhappy happens, then again it reflects our own state. If we can communicate with that, if we feel some connection, if we pause, if we get sad or get some reaction, then it's a reflection of what is happening inside us. Because once we become light and happy, a little gnomicky, then the past undoes itself. The past undoes itself, and the suffering never happened. But so far it happens, and it keeps happening. Because, well, what is past, what is present, what is future? In a way, it's a big projection of yourself. So you being grumpy here, and it starts a war in, I don't know, in Syria or somewhere, because you've been grumpy here.
Oh. Now we know who's to blame.
Yeah, yeah. Not the cat. So in a way, it's all story with the big S. Story, the drama. And as long as we need drama for our development, let's say, it will keep happening. The second we don't need any drama, it will undo itself. Like now there are some funny people who say that the Holocaust never happened and it was all a big mistake, or at least it wasn't as horrible as it's depicted.
Oh yeah.
Because they look at the construction of those so-called gas chambers and they say, well, you can't really kill people in that. It makes no sense at all. And so the time undoes itself. The second we don't need the drama, it undoes itself. It gets archived, in a way, somewhere on the genome. So the genome can archive things that never happened and that will happen, and alternative things, timelines, they all get archived, and then you can just look at them again if you need to But at the moment we need drama, because that's how we operate in this reality. What is drama? Why do we need it? It's something that helps us look at ourselves, helps to live it through and work with it and transform it. So we need drama, so it happens. All the wars, all the unhappiness, unfairness, it all comes from within us, if I answered your question.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. More questions?
No.
Right, then I guess we can finish. And as I read it, this situation, it reminds me of Miyazaki's first film. Do you know Miyazaki? Really, really famous cartoon maker, animation maker. His films are really amazing, every single one. Some are more amazing than others, but the theme of war and the meaningless of war is important in his cartoons. Even if it's not straightforward, he only has maybe a couple of films which are directly about war, but the theme is there, and he loves flying. He loves planes, airplanes, and gliders, all sorts of things, and he's really amazing with that. And he's just full of magic. So his very first film, and if you see more of his films, then it's quite funny to watch it, because you can see traces of his future films in it. You see, that character becomes that character in that film, and this character is that one in that film, and this detail is developed in the other film. So it's about a pilot, a war pilot, and something very strange happened. All his friends died, and he saw them going in their planes into the other world, other reality, and he was afraid, and he didn't go with them. And when he landed, he had a head of a pig. That was his curse. So it's an interesting film, and sort of underrated, because when people talk about Miyazaki, then first they talk about the Spirited Away, which is fantastic, or Nausicaa from the Valley of the Winds, which is really, really amazing, or Ponyo the Fish, which is really cool as well. Well, he has really amazing films. But that one, Porco Rosso, the Crimson Pig, Porco Rosso, is his first film. And he has this amazing scene where all his friends go away and he stays behind, and it really, really reminds me of the situation in that poem. So you may have a look at it if you like. Right, well then, let's finish.